Hello, friends, and welcome back to another lesson on Adobe InDesign. Today, I've given you a worksheet that we will be using to practice our exporting skills in the software. We're going to reuse the same files that we've been using, which are the cookbook spread pages, where we've got the two sets of spreads with the 4 pages total, and just using this so that you have something to export already. On page 1, if you'll notice, I've given you a set of instructions to help guide you through the exporting process. However, before we can do anything, I am going to ask that you make a folder labeled last name, first name, period, and ID export. This is where we're going to save all of our files into for today's activity in order to have a one-stop shop for everything. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to start in our layers panel. In our layers panel, you should see that I've provided you with 2 separate layers, one of which is locked called activity instructions. The other is layer 1, and that includes all of our layers for our spreads. Okay. But before we begin, we want to turn off the ability to print our activity instructions by going to the layer panel menu by clicking these 3 lines in the top right hand corner like any panel and going to layer options, and we are going to uncheck print layer. When you uncheck this, this does ensure that the directions or any page or part of the layer that you do not want exported is left off. Exporting to a PDF or an EPUB or anything like that is equivalent to printing in the program's eyes. And I'm going to say okay. I have given you, like I said, the directions here to help you, along with a few questions, or 2 questions, excuse me, that I'm going to ask you to answer. First, we're going to start with the PDF print option. In order to export anything, we're going to go to File menu, we're going to go down to Export, or you can do Command E. InDesign is a program that actually includes a keyboard shortcut for export because it doesn't have a lot of export options in the menu, but you have to go into the export to get the options. So it is going to say use the InDesign document name as the output name. You just want to make sure that you save each of these as your name, last name, first name, period, again, with whichever one that is. So for example, I've put that for you is that you're going to name that export PDF and place that in your folder. We're going to come down to format, and this is where we're going to choose our different choices. And I'm going to choose Adobe PDF print. You will notice there's an interactive option as well. That goes kind of hand in hand with those interactive options, but for today, we're just going to focus on these. Once you say, okay, this is where we're going to get our actual export options. Again, if you move this over, you can still see the directions, which is quite nice. We're going to make sure that we have set it only to pages 2 through 5, because again, there's no point in printing page 1 in the PDF document because it's blank, because we've turned off its ability to print. The other thing that you're going to see is you have some compression options. You can change some of these settings here. So if you wanted your resolution to be lower so that it wasn't as large of a file, you could change those type of things. You can also adjust whether you have it export as individual pages or whether it goes as spreads. You can also choose to export as create a separate PDF files, which means each file will go as a separate page or in a separate file. However, I'm going to leave that off because I want it to be one, but I am going to switch this over to spreads. Once you've switched it to spreads, you'll notice, and I'll go back, it does change a little bit of the description. It popped over real quick. But the other thing I can do is I can include some options down here. I can say include appearance, interactive elements. I can include bookmarks and hyperlinks if I want to. If you have hyperlinks, which this document does not, if you have hyperlinks though, you do need to make sure that you check off the hyperlinks and the bookmarks if you have them. Underneath compression, we're going to change our compression resolution for our color images down to 60. That's going to be very small, so they're going to look very, very pixelated, and that's completely fine. You're going to notice that it automatically, for images above 90, it changed some settings automatically for you, which is quite nice that you don't have to worry about that. A few other things that you're going to see in here is you can also turn on your printer's marks, your crop marks, your bleed marks. Typically, we turn these on for printing purposes, for like poster prints and things like that, so that the printer who is cutting the page has the ability to see the marks to help them. Underneath output, you've got some color choices that you can change. I always just pretty much leave this as it is, along with the font, the security, and the summary. Now, I will talk to you about what security is because this is a nice option if you ever need this, is that you can turn on a password for the document to either print or even open the document. This is great for encryption if you have something that is confidential and you want to ensure that the only person that is able to view it has the password. You can turn this on. When you're done, you're going to click export. The next one is called an epub. You should have learned this already. We should be very familiar with an epub. Epubs, remember, are for books, specifically Apple books is the epub file. Adobe kind of goes hand in hand with Apple, so we see a lot of default Apple files in our programs here, but we're going to choose epub fixed layout and we're going to click save. Again, we're going to ensure that we're naming it correctly, and I've got that for you in the directions. In here, again, we're going to adjust the range. We're going to change the resolution to make sure that it's set on 96. But this time, we're also going to do it as pages and not spreads. All pages. Range, excuse me. And then we pretty much, I'm going to ask you to leave everything else the same and then finish up. The last option is the JPEG option. So again, I'm going to go back to my export here. I'm going to change it over to JPEG. So every time you change the format, what I hope you notice is that the export panel does adjust itself accordingly. So this time we are going to stick with pages. We're going to change our range again to 2 through 5. This one you'll notice it's like all pages. You just have to type over to change the range. That always kind of throws people a little bit. And then we're going to change our resolution to 150 for this. And then we're going to say okay, or we're going to export. A bunch of warnings may pop up. Sometimes, a lot of times what you'll see is if you don't have it set, if you have any errors in the pre-flight panel, and you can see I have 6 errors because those are links to all these images are broken, but they're still there. Those will pop up. This is just a good exercise in order to have you go through the export commands to ensure that you've mastered how to manipulate and use that export panel. All right, hopefully this was helpful, and make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, friends.